A warm welcome to TV Africa News. This is Africa Today. My name is Najuma Luima, but first are the headlines. Foot and mouth disease outbreak threatens government. UBC journalist Robert Kagolo shot dead. Somalia president calls for urgent discussions with opponents. And in sports, Rhinos versus Buffaloes match postponed due to COVID-19 cases in Rhino camp. A warm welcome once again, and now the news in detail. The State Minister for Animal Industry, Honorable Bright Ramirama, has cautioned farmers for not allowing the guidelines issued by the government, which has led to the increase of foot and mouth disease. Our reporter Kachanchu has more.
Addressing the media at the Uganda Media Center in Kampala, government cautions the public, especially farmers, for not putting in place the control measures issued out by Ministry of Agriculture, Animals and Fisheries, which has led to increase of the outbreak of foot and mouth disease. The livestock population for which disease management must be undertaken is estimated at 14.8 million heads of cattle, of which 16 million are goats, 5.4 million sheep, 5 million pigs, over 60 million poultry. Livestock contributes 5% to the gross domestic profit of Uganda through sales of livestock and livestock products like milk, meat and eggs. However, Minister Ramirama said, for Uganda to continue enjoying accessibility to regional and international markets with regards to palatability, there is need for high quality and safe animal products, which calls for sanitary measures. Minister said the animal disease is caused by illegal movements, unprofessional practices and others. However, the government of Uganda has come up with different control measures, which includes increasing vaccination, removing veterinary masquerades and strengthening animal movement controls. Over 47 districts are confirmed with the foot and mouth disease. TV Africa News, Kachanchu Mtabazi reporting.
On 1st May, Uganda will join the rest of the world to celebrate the World International Labour Day. However, government said that the celebrations will be held scientifically in order to adhere to the standard operating procedures put up by the Ministry of Health. Our reporter Nalugo has more.
On 1st May every year, Uganda joins the rest of the world to commemorate the International Labour Day, to recognize workers and employers for their contribution to the socio-economic development of the country. This year's theme is Enhancing Innovation for Increased Employment Creation and Labor Productivity, a Sustainable COVID-19 Response. According to State Minister for Children Affairs, Honorable Florence Nachiwala Chiyinji, in light of the economic disruptions caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, government appeals to the public to adopt innovative ways in order to create more jobs and enhancing labor productivity. Minister Nachiwala also said government and other stakeholders held webinar dialogue and discussed the role of the ministry in the delivery of labor and employment services, and the feedback will help them greatly improve the services.
Away from that, police has started investigating the murder by shooting of Robert Kagolo, a UBC journalist, which occurred last night at around 8 p.m. at Bugembe Jembe village, Wakiso district.
Kampala Metropolitan Police Deputy Spokesperson Luke Oesjire says it is alleged that while Kagolo was returning from the village after his brother's burial, he hurriedly entered the lady's home, which was being guarded by LDU personnel, after he suspected that some people were following him, and he knocked the gate with his motor vehicle while gaining entrance. Oesjire said a disagreement ensued between the LDU personnel and the deceased, adding that the police are now studying circumstances that led to the shooting. He says Kagolo was first rushed to St. Joseph Hospital, Wakiso, where he succumbed to the injuries, and his body is yet to be taken to the city mortuary. Oesjire said the shooter, identified as Mamuli Rashid, and his colleague have been arrested. The deceased was the head of production at Radio Star under Uganda Broadcasting Corporation (UBC). He is also a former president of Uganda Journalists Association (UJA), an umbrella body formed in 1963 that brings together all Ugandan journalists.
The leader of Uganda Muslim Supreme Council, Sheikh Shaban Ramadan Mubaje, has been sued for allegedly selling land without the consent or consultation of believers. It is alleged that on June 24, 2020, Muslim leaders in disregard of the interests of Islamic faith sold the land in Sembabule to businessman Arthur Kayanja. We have more.
In a case filed before the High Court in Masaka, a group of 11 Muslim leaders in Sembabule district alleged that the transaction carried out in the name of Uganda Muslim Supreme Council, as the seller is tainted with fraud, illegalities and bad faith. Sheikh Mubaje is jointly sued with Uganda Muslim Supreme Council, Supreme Council Secretary General Ramadan Mugalu and businessman Kayanja. The land in dispute, formerly known as Maogola Ranch, is at Bukiraji Ntusi village, Remyaga County. It is alleged that the transaction was done on land under caveat and that it was purchased at a price below the fair market value to cheat the institution and government of its revenues. Through their lawyers, the Muslim leaders contend that the transaction was done without due diligence and during a period of government moratorium, suspension of activity on all land transactions including land purchases, as a measure to curb on fraud during the COVID-19 pandemic. They are now seeking court orders to cancel the purchase and a permanent injunction barring Sheikh Mubaje and Sheikh Ramadan Mugalu and Mr. Kayanja from ever transacting such businesses. However, in their defense, the Uganda Muslim Supreme Council leaders contend that the case is defective and misconceived, for it does not disclose any reasonable cause of the action against them.
Away from that, Kabaka Ronald Muwenda II, through Buganda Land Board, has donated land to government for the construction of 5 billion shillings hospital in Nakule, Nassana municipality. Let's take a look. Let's go for a very short break. We will be right back. Welcome back. You're still watching TV Africa News, the right to know. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Filippo Grandi, has urged for more support to help Burundian refugees choosing to go back home. He said this while meeting a group traveling from Rwanda back to Burundi during his two-day visit to the country.
Since 2017, at least 145,000 Burundian refugees have been assisted to return home, with more than 25,000 coming from Rwanda in recent months. On average, 2,000 people are being assisted to voluntarily return each week from Rwanda, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Tanzania. The High Commissioner accompanied the most recent convoy from Rwanda, transporting 159 Burundian refugees returning home after years of living in exile. In February, UNHCR, together with the government of Burundi and 19 partners, launched the Joint Refugee Return and Reintegration Plan, which appeals for $104.3 million from the international community to assist returnees and the communities where they are returning.
Somalia's government on Wednesday urged people who had fled violence in the capital to return home as tensions eased after the president called for elections and renewed a dialogue with his political rivals.
President Mohamed Abdullahi Mohamed announced that he would seek Parliament's approval for fresh elections, appearing to abandon a 2-year extension to his mandate that ignited the country's worst political violence in years. The president, widely known by his nickname Farmer Joe, also called for urgent discussions with his political opponents, who had refused to recognize his authority since his 4-year term elapsed in February. The announcement offered a brief reprieve to Mogadishu, which has been on a knife's edge since the political crisis erupted into gunfire on Sunday between rival factions of the security forces. The United Nations Humanitarian Agency said on Wednesday that up to 100,000 people have fled the violence, including evacuees from other parts of the war-torn country who had sought refuge in the capital.
Away from that, Sudan has reportedly suspended plans for Russia to open a naval logistics base in a key Red Sea port, in news that has sparked immediate denials from Moscow, saying that it has not received any official notifications from the Sudanese side. Let's have more on this story.
Russia in December announced the signing of a 25-year deal to build the logistics hub for nuclear-powered warships and up to 300 military and civilian personnel in Port Sudan. It would have been Russia's first naval base in Africa and its second on foreign territory after Syria's status. But according to the Dubai-based Al Arabiya Broadcasters Twitter account, Sudan has suspended the naval base agreement signed by Moscow with the former regime. Sudan, suffering from civil war, the 2011 cession of oil-rich South Sudan, and 3 decades of U.S. sanctions, has been under a transactional civilian majority government since the April 2019 ouster of longtime President Omar Bashir.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa claimed on Thursday that there was nothing sinister about the funding for his 2017 political campaign to become president of the ruling party, the African National Congress.
President Ramaphosa was testifying for a second day before the judicial inquiry investigating allegations of corruption in government and state-owned companies during the tenure of his predecessor, former President Jacob Zuma. Describing how his campaign funds were raised, Ramaphosa said his managers did not tell him who donated money so as to reduce the possibility they would influence his decisions. It is the first time Ramaphosa has been publicly questioned about the funding for his campaign, which was reported to have raised close to 1 billion rand from wealthy individuals and businesses. Ramaphosa disputed allegations that the money was used to buy votes.
Let's once again take a very quick short break. We will be right back. Welcome back. Once again, you're still watching TV Africa News, The Right to Know. France's Minister of Economy and Finance, Bruno Le Maire, visited a portion of the future route of the Abidjan Metro and the reconstruction site of the Felix Hamfort-Boigny Bridge, over which the future metro route passes. Let's take a look.
Bruno Le Maire, French economic minister, said that Ivory Coast knows that it can count on France's financial support to help it carry out a number of infrastructure projects that are essential to its economic development. He added that the contract is yet to be finalized due to several stumbling blocks, such as financing of the project and provision of land by Ivorian state. The construction has been entrusted to a group of companies led by the French company Bouygues for 1.36 billion euros. Côte d'Ivoire remains France's leading economic partner in the CFA currency zone. By 2019, French exports had reached nearly 1.2 billion euros and imports amounted to over 900 million euros.
In our health news today, in a bid to combat COVID-19 in India, the Hyderabad-based Bharat Biotech on Thursday announced that Covaxin will be available to state governments at a price of 400 rupees per dose. Let's have more on this story.
Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal on Friday said that the national capital has not yet received COVID-19 vaccinations and that his government is in constant touch with companies for the same. This comes a day before India is set to open vaccinations for all adults, where they requested both companies to make available to people 67 lakh doses each in the next 3 months. In a strong message to all states and DGP of states, the Supreme Court said that any clampdown on information in which citizens are communicating their grievances will be treated as a contempt of court. Meanwhile, as India grapples with a deadly COVID-19 second wave, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is chairing a meeting of the Union Council of Ministers on Friday, the first in the aftermath of the second wave, to discuss the pandemic and the ongoing vaccination drive, which will now open for those in the 18 to 45 age group from 1st May.
In our sports news today, the Rhinos versus Buffaloes match during March Day 8 of the Nile Special Stout Rugby Premier League has been postponed by Uganda Rugby Union due to COVID-19. Our reporter Katende has more.
This was revealed after a player who has not been named in the Rhinos camp tested positive for COVID-19 on Thursday after being in contact with his teammates and the club officials during this week's early training session Z. Uganda Rugby Union has thus swung into action with COVID-19 protocol in which the Rhinos players will be isolated and tested for COVID-19. The new date for this match will be confirmed at the later date. Consequently, both teams will remain in their positions on the log. Buffaloes and Rhinos are tied with 13 points in 6th and 7th place respectively. Katende Chabasinga, reporting for TV Africa News.
Now, before we end our news bulletin today, let's take a recap of our top stories. Foot and mouth disease outbreak threatens government. UBC journalist Robert Kagolo shot dead. Somalia president calls for urgent discussions with opponents. And in sports, Rhinos versus Buffaloes match postponed due to COVID-19 cases in Rhino camp. Now, before we end our news bulletin today, let's take a recap of our top stories. That was the news. Thank you for always keeping it TV Africa. Please do stay tuned. More programming coming your way. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel for more service delivery.
This is Africa, and that was the news.